My doctor's nurse called 2 days after a routine blood panel, which never happens for a normal result. Nothing urgent, she said right away, which somehow made it worse, but he'd like you to come in and go over one of your numbers. I spent those 2 days before the appointment running through every possible bad outcome, the way you do when someone says nothing urgent in a tone that doesn't quite match the words. My wife noticed something was off, even though I hadn't told her about the call, and I caught her watching me a little too closely over dinner both nights, neither of us saying anything about what we were both clearly thinking. I'm not going to tell you yet what that number turned out to be. I want you to sit with those 2 days first, because the actual appointment, when it finally came, wasn't anything close to what I'd spent 2 days bracing myself for. You've probably had a version of that same weight yourself, a callback, a raised eyebrow from someone in a white coat, 2 days of imagining the worst before you actually get the specific answer. I ran through cancer, my heart, my kidneys, every serious thing I could think of, in roughly that order, more than once, lying awake at 3 a.m, rehearsing conversations with my wife I hoped I'd never actually need to have. What that one number turned out to explain surprised me more than almost anything else I'd learned about my own body in years. In a minute, I'll tell you exactly what it was and exactly what my doctor said about it. Here's what I eventually learned. An erection depends on 3 systems working together: hormonal, nervous system signal, and blood flow, governed by nitric oxide. In men who are actually deficient in vitamin D, research has found a correlation between low vitamin D levels and lower testosterone, part of that hormonal piece of the puzzle. I want to be precise about this. Vitamin D isn't a universal testosterone booster for every man, and the evidence specifically applies to men who are deficient, not men with already adequate levels. But if you are deficient, correcting it appears to matter. I want to underline that precision, because I don't want anyone watching this to run out and buy a bottle of vitamin D, assuming it's a universal fix. It isn't. It was a specific answer to a specific deficiency that a blood test actually confirmed in my case, not a guess I made on my own. These days, I have noticeably more energy than I did before that blood test. I spend far more time outside than I used to, which helps with this specific thing directly, and I've noticed my mood is steadier too, something I hadn't expected as a side benefit at all. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I'd blamed just age for something that had an actual, specific, findable cause. I want to be careful here because I don't want to oversell this. Vitamin D isn't a magic switch, and it isn't relevant to every man watching this. Here's what reframed everything else for me. The blood vessels involved here are some of the smallest in your entire circulatory system, smaller than the ones feeding your heart, so circulation issues tend to show up here first. Researchers who study this treat it as a meaningful early signal. It's one of the reasons doctors who specialize in this area often say that erectile difficulty can act as an early warning sign for cardiovascular problems elsewhere in the body, sometimes showing up years before a heart problem would otherwise become obvious through any other symptom. For 3 years, I slept 3 feet away from my wife, and it felt like 300 miles. She'd fall asleep first. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't just age. Here's what no one ever sits a man down to explain. This isn't about willpower. It's about specific systems in your body quietly losing steam year after year while nobody tells you it's even happening. The pills my doctor handed me gave me headaches, made my chest feel tight, and honestly, they made me feel like I needed a pill just to feel like a man. I wasn't willing to live like that. There's a gentler way to bring those systems back, without any of that. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore. I'll show you exactly what changed it in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's what actually happened. Once my blood test confirmed a real deficiency, my doctor recommended a specific vitamin D supplement dose, monitored with follow-up testing rather than guessed at. I want to underline that part. This wasn't a video-inspired guess. It was a documented deficiency corrected under actual medical supervision, which is exactly how this should be approached. If you suspect this might apply to you, the first step isn't buying a bottle off a shelf. It's asking your doctor for the blood test. Alongside that, I made a point of getting more real sunlight, since your body produces vitamin D from sun exposure directly, which tied in naturally with a morning walk habit I was already building. I added vegetables rich in dietary nitrate, feeding the same nitric oxide pathway from a completely separate direction. Better sleep, since a good part of the hormonal piece of this rebuilds itself overnight. Less alcohol, since it works against nearly everything else on this list when it's overdone. None of this replaced the actual medical piece. The blood test, the supervised dose, the follow-up testing. It just meant that once the specific, correctable problem was actually being addressed, I wasn't leaving the rest of the system unsupported at the same time. My wife and I spent an entire Saturday gardening together last month, hours in the sun, and I came inside energized rather than needing to collapse into a chair the way I might have a couple of years back. She said she couldn't remember the last time I'd volunteered for an entire day of yard work without being asked twice. I think about a man named Gerald who wrote in, 68, who told me his own doctor had checked his vitamin D almost as an afterthought, and it came back significantly low, something he'd carried for years without any explanation at all. He said the diagnosis itself, having an actual name for part of the problem, changed how he thought about the rest of his health too, and he started asking for fuller blood panels at every appointment after that. If you're on medication for blood pressure or your heart, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces your treatment, and vitamin D supplementation specifically should be guided by an actual blood test and your doctor, not a guess based on a video. What I want you to walk away with is this. It's just age. Sometimes hides something specific and correctable underneath it. The only way to know is to actually ask and get tested, instead of accepting the vague explanation as final. Gerald's story stuck with me because it was so close to my own. A routine test, checked almost as an afterthought, revealing something that had been sitting there unaddressed for years. Neither of us would have found it if we hadn't happened to ask for the fuller picture. Gerald told me he now asks for a complete panel at every single physical, not just the basics his doctor defaults to, since he'd learned firsthand how much can hide behind a normal result that was never actually checked for the specific thing that mattered. Your erections don't disappear just because you got older. They fade when the systems behind them, blood flow, nitric oxide, hormones, energy, and recovery, slowly stop getting the support they need. Ignore that long enough, and it becomes harder to reverse. That's why I take this concentrated formula every morning. Not one ingredient trying to fix everything, but several working together to support circulation, energy, and drive from the inside out. It's a natural, doctor-backed protocol designed to support pathways your body already knows how to use. No prescription, nothing artificial. Stronger, present, confident again. And unlike the pills I tried, I didn't feel disconnected from my own body. No headaches, just steady, gradual change. My wife noticed before I even said a word. The presentation is linked right below this video. It won't replace your doctor or a healthy lifestyle. It's simply there to support your body. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore, and it's not too late for you. Just age is a filing system, really, one that closes a question instead of opening it. It lets you stop wondering, which feels like relief in the moment, even though what you're actually doing is giving up on an answer that might have existed the whole time, waiting for someone to finally ask the right question and order the right test. I think about the man I was, filing every unexplained decline under just age. And I think about the man I am now, who asked for a specific answer and got one. That's not vanity. That's dignity. There's a real difference between accepting a mystery and accepting a diagnosis. A mystery leaves you nowhere to go. A diagnosis, even an unglamorous one like a vitamin deficiency, gives you an actual direction to walk in, and that difference alone changed how I felt long before the correction itself had fully taken effect. If you've ever accepted it's just age without ever actually getting tested for anything specific, tell me in the comments. And if this kind of practical, honest explanation is useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this ahead.